For decades, military engineers spent billions of dollars building the perfect tank. Israel's answer was the Merkava. Named after the Hebrew word for chariot, it is widely considered one of the most advanced, most survivable main battle tanks ever built. Unlike any other tank in the world, the Merkava's engine is positioned in the front, a deliberate design choice that gives the crew an extra layer of protection from frontal attacks. Its composite armor can absorb hits that would destroy virtually any other armored vehicle on Earth. And on top of all that physical protection, Israel added something no other country had ever deployed at scale before: the Trophy Active Protection System, a radar-guided interceptor that detects incoming missiles and rockets and physically shoots them down before they can hit the tank. The Merkava was supposed to be untouchable. Then, in the last week of March 2026, a video began circulating on Telegram. It was grainy, first-person footage shot from a small drone no bigger than a pizza box. The drone was flying low and fast across a field in southern Lebanon. Ahead of it, a Merkava Mark IV tank. The drone dove straight at the rear of the vehicle, the thinnest armor, closest to the ammunition. The footage cut just before impact. That drone cost approximately $500. The Merkava costs $4.5 million, and that $500 drone just changed the future of warfare. The weapon that wasn't supposed to exist here. To understand why this moment matters so much, you need to understand what an FPV drone actually is, and why military analysts spent years saying it would never become a serious threat in the Middle East. FPV stands for first-person view. These are small, fast, agile quadcopter drones originally designed for racing and hobby flying. The operator wears goggles that feed live video from the drone's camera, giving the sensation of flying through the drone's own eyes. In their basic commercial form, they're toys. But in warfare, equipped with an RPG warhead or an explosive charge, they become something else entirely. A precision-guided munition that costs almost nothing, can be built from off-the-shelf parts, can be operated from a basement hundreds of meters away, and can be guided directly into the weakest point of any armored vehicle with frightening accuracy. The world first saw FPV drones used at massive scale in Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine both adopted them rapidly, and by 2024, military analysts were estimating that FPV drones were responsible for between 70 and 80% of all vehicle losses on the Ukrainian battlefield. They became the defining weapon of that conflict. Cheap, lethal, nearly impossible to stop in large numbers. But the Middle East, analysts said, was different. Hezbollah didn't have the technical infrastructure. The supply chains were different. The battlefield conditions were different. And Israel's trophy system would handle any drone threat that materialized. Then came 2026, and every one of those assumptions collapsed. How we got here. The 2026 war changes everything. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched one of the most audacious military operations in modern history, a coordinated, simultaneous assault on Iran's nuclear program, military leadership, and supreme command structure. Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion struck nearly 900 targets in 12 hours. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Dozens of senior Iranian officials and IRGC commanders died in the opening hours. Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan were struck with the most powerful bunker-buster bombs in the U.S. arsenal. Iran responded with hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones targeting Israel, U.S. military bases across the Gulf, and Arab states allied with Washington. The Strait of Hormuz was closed. Global oil prices surged. Airlines rerouted away from the entire region. But Iran's direct missile capability was being rapidly degraded. By the end of the first week of war, U.S. Central Command reported that around 300 Iranian missile launchers had been destroyed. By the second week, Iran's missile fire toward Israel had dropped by over 70% compared to the opening salvos. The combination of American and Israeli strikes on launch sites, storage facilities, and command infrastructure was working. Iran needed a different strategy. and it turned to its most powerful proxy, Hezbollah. On March 2, 2026, Israel launched a ground invasion of southern Lebanon, the second major Israeli ground operation in Lebanon in less than 2 years. The stated objective was to push Hezbollah back from the border and prevent attacks on northern Israeli communities. 4 IDF divisions, including armored units equipped with Merkava tanks, advanced into southern Lebanon on multiple axes. That is when Hezbollah unveiled a capability it had been quietly building for years. The first strike, March 26, 2026. On the evening of March 26, 2026, Hezbollah released footage on Telegram that immediately went viral across military analysis communities worldwide. The video showed an FPV drone approaching a Merkava Mark IV tank near the village of Merkava in southern Lebanon. The drone flew low, hugging the terrain, and dove directly at the rear of the tank, targeting what military analysts consider the most vulnerable section of any armored vehicle: the back, where armor is thinnest and where ammunition is stored. The footage cut just before impact, consistent with drone warfare footage from Ukraine, where pilots rarely capture the post-strike result. Military analysts and open-source intelligence trackers immediately recognized the significance. This was confirmed as the first documented FPV drone strike on an Israeli armored vehicle in the current conflict. Hezbollah had used bomber drones, the kind that drops a grenade from above, before. But a guided FPV attack of this kind was new. It demonstrated that Hezbollah had acquired both the hardware and the trained operators to execute Ukraine-style drone warfare in Lebanon. A senior IDF official, speaking to the war zone, acknowledged the footage was real, stating that the clips showed Hezbollah using FPV drones with accurate manual control and sensible targeting, and that some hits are probably real. However, he cautioned that the footage was selectively edited and that success rates are likely overstated. What happened next made that caveat seem increasingly optimistic. The campaign that followed. March 26th was not a one-off. It was the opening of a sustained campaign. Over the following weeks, Hezbollah released video after video of FPV drone strikes on Israeli vehicles in southern Lebanon, Merkava Mark IV tanks, Namer armored personnel carriers, one of the most heavily protected APCs ever built, with armor derived from the Merkava chassis itself, D9 armored bulldozers, military trucks, and IDF Humvee in Mais al-Jabal. The attacks kept coming, and the videos kept circulating. By April 21, 2026, Federico Borsari, a fellow with the Transatlantic Defense and Security Program at the Center for European Policy Analysis, had documented 25 confirmed FPV attacks by Hezbollah against Israeli vehicles, 22 of which directly targeted armored platforms, including Merkava tanks and Namer APCs. 2 additional attacks were documented in the days that followed, both again targeting vehicles. Then, on April 26th, the campaign turned fatal. A small Hezbollah FPV drone struck Israeli soldiers who were repairing their tank in the southern Lebanese town of Taibeh, inside an Israeli-declared security zone during what was supposed to be a ceasefire period. The drone, rigged with explosives, detonated on impact. Sergeant Aiden Fuchs, 19 years old, was killed. 6 other soldiers were wounded, 4 of them seriously. An Israeli Air Force helicopter rushed to evacuate the casualties. It was the first confirmed fatality from a Hezbollah FPV drone strike on Israeli forces, and it happened during a ceasefire. The Times of Israel noted that the attack laid bare a growing vulnerability: the Israel Defense Forces' lack of preparedness for first-person view drones in Lebanon. Why Trophy cannot stop this. Here is the part that every military analyst in the world is now paying very close attention to. The Trophy Active Protection System is genuinely one of the most impressive pieces of military technology ever fielded on an armored vehicle. It uses the ELTA ELM-2133 radar to provide 360-degree coverage around the tank. When the system detects an incoming rocket or missile, it automatically calculates the threat's trajectory, type, and time to impact, and then fires a defensive projectile to neutralize it mid-air. Since its deployment on Israeli Merkavas, Trophy has intercepted dozens of anti-tank guided missiles in combat, including Cornet missiles, considered among the most lethal man-portable anti-tank weapons in the world. Against a rocket-propelled grenade fired from 300 meters, Trophy works. Against a Cornet missile fired from a kilometer away, Trophy works. Against an FPV drone diving from above at 55 degrees or steeper, Trophy cannot engage it. The system's radar coverage and interceptor geometry are optimized for threats arriving on a relatively flat trajectory. Missiles and rockets fired horizontally from a distance. FPV drones attack from above, diving steeply onto the roof or rear deck of the tank, which is both the thinnest armor and precisely the area that Trophy's interceptors cannot reliably reach. The maximum effective elevation for Trophy's defensive projectiles is approximately 55 degrees. An FPV coming in at 70, 80, or 90 degrees from above is simply outside the envelope. The Army Recognition Defense Journal noted this weakness was first exposed in October 2023, when Hamas drones damaged Merkava tanks in Gaza by dropping explosive charges directly onto the vehicle roofs, completely bypassing Trophy's coverage zone. The lesson was clear, but fully adapting to it across all deployed armor formations takes time that battlefield reality does not always allow. The situation is made worse by another problem: volume. Trophy carries a finite number of interceptor rounds. Against a coordinated swarm of multiple FPV drones attacking simultaneously from different angles and altitudes, the system simply runs out of responses. This is not a theoretical concern. It is the exact scenario military planners in Ukraine have been working around for 2 years. And now, it is happening in Lebanon. The fiber optic dimension. Jamming doesn't work. If the Trophy vulnerability were the only problem, Israeli engineers could potentially address it over time with hardware modifications. But Hezbollah has added another layer to the threat that makes it dramatically harder to counter. Multiple confirmed FPV strikes in Lebanon were carried out using fiber optic guided drones. Standard FPV drones communicate with their operators via radio signals. This means they are, in principle, vulnerable to electronic jamming, a capability Israel has invested heavily in. Flood the radio spectrum with interference, and the drone loses its connection to the operator. Fiber optic guided drones do not use radio signals. They spool out a thin physical cable behind them as they fly, maintaining a direct hardwired connection to the operator. There is no radio signal to jam. There is no frequency to disrupt. The only way to stop a fiber optic FPV drone is to physically shoot it down or destroy the operator before the drone reaches its target. The War Zone reported confirmed footage of Hezbollah fiber optic FPV drones striking Merkava tanks, a D9 armored bulldozer, and Namer APCs in April 2026. These drones are guided through what appeared to be fiber optic cables, making them effectively immune to Israel's electronic warfare systems. A senior military analyst quoted by the Times of Israel said it plainly: "Unless you're lucky or the operator makes a mistake, the only reliable counter is to shoot them down." Experimental automated defense systems are being tested in Ukraine, but none have been deployed at scale anywhere in the world. What the real tank losses look like. Here it is important to be precise, because this is an information environment full of exaggeration. The fabricated claims circulating on certain YouTube channels, 2,000 drones destroying 47 tanks in 4 hours, are not supported by any credible evidence. No mainstream outlet, no verified military tracker, no official source has confirmed anything close to that scale. Those numbers appear to be entirely invented. What is confirmed and documented is a serious and growing pattern of losses. One report from Military Watch magazine, citing March 26th engagement data, claimed Israel lost 21 Merkava tanks in a single day, primarily from Hezbollah ambushes using coordinated anti-tank guided missiles. Defense Security Asia, analyzing combat footage from March 22, 26, reported claims of between 75 and 100 Merkava losses overall, though it noted the lack of independent verification for the full figure and cautioned careful interpretation. What is independently confirmed is a systematic Hezbollah campaign of coordinated ambushes along specific axes: the Tebe Der Syrian axis, the Tebe Kantara axis, where Israeli armored columns advancing toward the Litani River were funneled into pre-prepared kill zones. Hezbollah used a layered combination of long-range Kornet anti-tank missiles, Almas and Delavia guided missiles, and FPV drones to attack simultaneously from multiple angles, overwhelming the trophy system's ability to respond to all threats at once. This is textbook anti-armor doctrine refined through years of studying the Ukraine battlefield, now applied in southern Lebanon with Iranian-supplied weapons. The strategic picture. What this means for every army on Earth. Pull back from the immediate battlefield for a moment and consider what is actually happening here. The main battle tank has been the dominant instrument of ground warfare for over a century, since World War I. Entire military doctrines, NATO strategies, and defense budgets worth hundreds of billions of dollars have been built around the assumption that a well-protected, well-crewed main battle tank is the decisive weapon of land combat. The Merkava represents the absolute pinnacle of that philosophy. Decades of Israeli engineering experience, billions of dollars invested, the most advanced active protection system ever fielded, and a $500 drone with an RPG warhead, flown by an operator sitting in a basement, can target its exact weak point with enough precision to threaten the crew inside. The lesson from Ukraine was already clear. Tanks cannot operate effectively in an environment saturated with cheap drones without massive investment in counter-drone systems, tactics, and training. Russia and Ukraine both learned this at enormous cost over 3 years of war. Now Israel is learning it in Lebanon, compressed into weeks rather than years. Every armored brigade commander in NATO, in Russia, in China, in South Korea, in India, is watching these videos and running the same calculation. If Hezbollah, a non-state actor operating with Iranian support, but not the resources of a nation-state military, can degrade the world's most protected tank with $500 commercial drones, what does that mean for armored warfare in a major conflict between peer competitors? It means the era of deploying massed armor without comprehensive drone defense is over. The tank is not dead, but the tank operating without layered counter-drone protection, electronic warfare assets, and dedicated anti-FPV systems is now dangerously exposed in a way it has never been before. Israel's response: adapting under fire. Israel is not standing still in the face of this threat. Before the current conflict, Israel's defense ministry ordered approximately 5,000 FPV drones from Israeli firm X-10 for use by IDF ground forces. The IDF has published footage of its own FPV drone strikes against Hezbollah operatives in Lebanon, demonstrating that Israel is rapidly deploying the same technology offensively. The IDF is also experimenting with cage armor for vehicles to deflect drone strikes, a practice first developed in Ukraine. But there is a fundamental asymmetry here that cannot be resolved quickly. Hezbollah can manufacture or procure FPV drones for a few $100s each. Replacing a Merkava tank costs $4.5 million and takes years of industrial production. The economics of the drone threat favor the attacker in a way that has no easy solution. The IDF is investigating every incident. The Air Force's leadership has conducted detailed reviews. Israeli defense companies are accelerating work on automated counter-drone systems. But as the Times of Israel noted after the April 26th fatal strike, for now, there is no easy fix. The bigger picture: Iran's strategy. What is happening in Lebanon is not happening in isolation. It is part of a deliberate Iranian strategy that has been years in the making. Iran has spent over a decade equipping, training, and advising Hezbollah, not just with weapons, but with battlefield doctrine. Iran watched the Ukraine war with intense interest. Iranian military advisors were present in Russia during portions of that conflict, studying drone warfare tactics firsthand. The Shahed 136 drone that Iran supplied to Russia and that became one of the signature weapons of the Ukraine war is a direct product of that investment. In Lebanon in 2026, Iran's strategy is being executed through Hezbollah as a proxy. Use cheap, scalable drone technology to impose costs on Israeli armor, tie down IDF ground forces in a difficult urban and mountainous terrain, and create a second front that stretches Israeli and American military resources while the broader war with Iran continues. It is a strategy that does not require Iran to defeat Israel outright. It only requires making the cost of continued operations high enough, in equipment, in lives, and in political pressure, to affect Israeli decision-making. A $500 drone killing a 19-year-old sergeant and wounding 6 others during a ceasefire is not just a tactical event. It is a strategic message. Outrow. Here is what this story tells us about the world we now live in. The most expensive, most sophisticated tank ever built can be threatened by hardware that costs less than a smartphone. The most advanced active protection system in the world has a blind spot that a fiber optic cable can exploit. And a non-state actor with Iranian backing and lessons learned from a war in Eastern Europe can now force the most powerful military alliance on Earth to fundamentally rethink how ground warfare works. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now, on video, in southern Lebanon, in the spring of 2026. The implications extend far beyond this conflict. Every military in the world is watching. Every defense ministry is recalculating. And every tank crew operating anywhere on Earth is now asking a question that their predecessors never had to ask. What is flying above me right now? The $500 drone did not kill the tank, but it permanently changed what it means to be protected. And that changes everything. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where warfare is heading, the real technology, the real tactics, the real stakes, share it with someone who needs to understand. Subscribe for more coverage as this conflict and its lessons continue to develop. Because in modern warfare, the next revolution is never announced. It just appears on a Telegram video, flying at 120 kilometers per hour toward the back of a tank.